No. This village that you're in today was opened to the public in 1946 as a collection of early Americana by two brothers, Albert and J. Cheney Wells, part of the Wells family that owned American Optical over in Southbridge, the next town southeast of here. They made lenses and glasses. Most of these buildings that you see around here today were brought in from other parts of New England to recreate a very small slice of the 1830s. They had purchased this piece of property, put the museum here 10 years prior to that, 1936, because it already had a grist mill site and a sawmill site and the mill pond down below. They wanted to show how water power influenced the 1830s as the start of the Industrial Revolution. The rest of this was a farm. Got almost ready to open up, then World War II started. That's why we never opened up till 1946. We've seen a lot of changes over the years. When the village first opened up, we only had a handful of buildings. Only had 81 paid visitors here the first day. At that time, you could tour the village in your car for $1. I've had horses in here on a special promotional day we had before the pandemic. We had over 14,600 people here in one day.
Wow.
It was awful. All right, today I'm just doing a little loop around the common, okay? It's going to try to load and unload here. I'm going to try to tell you a little bit about some of the history behind the village and some of the buildings as we go along. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask, okay? Would like to ask that everybody please remain seated. Thank you.
I knew it was two wealthy men who would have a collection, but I didn't realize they were failed American artists.
Yeah, Albert had been bitten by the antique bug pretty hard. He and his brother were playing golf up in New Hampshire, and a freak thunder shower came up. They went back to the clubhouse, and while they were there, they started to visit with a fellow named George Watson. He was one of the architects helped put together Williamsburg. By the time they got home, Albert had convinced his brother to go in half with him, and they bought this piece of property. They were aware of this piece of property, its proximity to Route 20, which at that time was known as the Boston Post Road, because their late sister Mary and her husband Frank Finney had owned it when it was a farm. So by that time, Albert had already had a collection in Southbridge that had outgrown a 32-room house. So just decided they'd share it with the public. The rest is history, basically.
Then they went looking for specific types of buildings to make their own new town, right?
Yep. And it wasn't until later they focused on the 1830s. When I was a kid, they used to have a stock on pillars up here on the common.
I remember that,
But,
yes.
you know, kids would bring in their own locks and lock another kid up, and security go down there about 3 times a week with their bolt cutters. Had to be a circus. But
So we just moved.
I could write a book. I mean, there's a lot of things that are going on here. Where are you folks in back from?
Maynard?
Have you been here before?
Yes, I have not.
Welcome.
So my husband grew up in Sturbridge. We lived in Rhode Island for 35 years, and now we're in Broomfield. But when he was a kid, he used to come over and fish in the ponds. Like they'd sneak in, and people would think they were part of the village, and they would pretend that they were like the costumed workers, and they were nice, sweet little kids fishing. But no, it was just to fish. That's what they wanted to do.
When you're in Rhode Island, did you ever visit Cogshell Farm down in Bristol?
And yeah, and now they're partners with Sturbridge.
Yep.
It's great.
We should go again. We need the money. Please remain seated. Jim, pay attention. Easy. What's your name, sir? Al? Nice to talk. This building over here to your right is the Minor Grand Store and Bake Shop. They're open today. They have hot coffee, delicious cookies and fudge, tinware, pottery, all kinds of goodies for sale in there. That building was purchased down at Stafford Springs, Connecticut in 1938 for just $300. Got that when they widened Stafford Street. This brick building over here to your right is the Thompson Bank. We brought that in from Thompson, Connecticut in 1955. One of the few buildings that was actually moved here in one piece. Basically created that up, put it on the back of a truck and moved it here. We'd be hard-pressed to do that today because of some of the bridges and the power lines. Even back then it was an issue. The most direct route was about 18 miles, with 34 miles they had to bring it here. This yellow house over here to your right is the Finch House. This came out of Willimantic, Connecticut. This started out like a small house out in front. was just a little 2-room farmhouse. Then as the family grew, they added onto it 3 times. The original structure dates back to 1737. Last addition on the back there dates back to 1830. This unpainted house over here to your right with the red trim is the oldest house in the village. This is the Fenno House, dates back to 1725. That was donated to Old Sturbridge Village by the Canton Historical Society. We depict that as the house of an elderly widow and her daughters. Make their living out of spinning and weaving and pushing a needle sewing. Do a lot of wool dyeing and textile demonstrations.
I don't want to interrupt. I'll ask someone, okay?
So, this barn over here to your right is the result of a barn raising demonstration that we did back in 1987 and 88. All of the beams in that barn were hand hewn here at the village by our craftsmen. All the lumber was sawn at our water-powered sawmill down on the mill pond that we built in 1983 and 84. And all the hardware was made at the blacksmith shop. We had a crew of about 20 historic interpreters who saw that from start to finish. Put up the whole frame in one weekend and closed it in later on. It's a copy of the rice barn that used to be up in New Braintree. The village had actually tried to purchase that, and in the last moments the guy backed out. He allowed us to take drawings and measurements. We did blueprints and made that. And I guess it worked out in the end because his barn collapsed under a snow load late 90s. How are you, darling? Good to see you. Your favorite barn? We have a pair of newborn babies that were born this morning in that pen off to the right. We're up to four sets of twins so far. Have you seen them?
I'm on it right now.
Not enough meat on them for a good sandwich. Thank you.
Want to help me adopt one?
Small flocks of sheep like that were very common in New England in the 1830s. According to the 1830 town census, we had over 4,000 sheep in the town of Sturbridge.
Wow.
Just 1,800 people. By 1830, 80% of Massachusetts had been cleared for farmland. Today, we're almost 80% wooded again. Sheep did very, very well in some of these marginal side hill pastures where a cow would be hard pressed to survive, let alone make milk. Wool was worth 40 cents a pound. You had a very good job as a skilled laborer. You might even make $1 a day. They paid you to have a few sheep out that backside hill pasture. We are supposed to load and unload at the Minor Grant store, but as long as I told you that, if you happen to hop on while I'm stopped, there's nothing I can do about it. You understand how 21st century liability works, right? This big white meeting house over here on the west end of the common was only moved a few miles. That was brought in from the Fistale area of Sturbridge. That building was acquired by Ruth Wells, the village's first director, in 1947. It had been built by the Sturbridge Baptist Society. They were joining denomination with another church in town. Ruth constructed a deal because she traded a new electric Hammond organ for the new church in that building. The village moved it here shortly afterwards. It was actually the second time that building was moved. The first time was in 1838. I was not here for that. This family purchased it, moved it from just above Sturbridge Common over to Fistale with oxen and rollers. They cut the building into 2 sections, front and back, divided it right by the second window. Took them 13 and a half weeks to move it about 3.5 miles. When the village moved it, they left the oxen in the vineyard. Southbridge Trucking disassembled it. The steeple was an add-on. The original steeple had blown off with the hurricane in 1938 when it was sitting over at Fistale. They had never replaced it. The village built that one on there after they moved it. This road that we're sitting on was already here when the Wells brothers bought this piece of property, put the museum here. Goes from the west end of our parking lot, past security, past the center meeting house, goes right out past the shoe shop, schoolhouse, pottery shop, goes all the way down through the middle of the Freeman farm. That's the remnants of an unfinished railroad bed. that was supposed to be part of an express railroad running from Palmer, Massachusetts to the deep port of Providence, Rhode Island. The fellow that was funding the project, Charles Melville Hayes, died on the Titanic, and they went bankrupt. It's supposed to be part of the Grand Trunk Railroad. This graveyard over here to your right is kind of a counterfeit thing. There's nobody buried there that we're aware of. Those are old markers. Most of those markers came from what is now Quabbin Reservoir. When the Metropolitan District Commission flooded the towns in western Massachusetts, created a reservoir for the city of Boston, they moved all the graves that they're aware of. The families of the deceased had rights to have new markers. Some of the old markers were discarded. They ended up in the hands of a guy in Vermont who looked at them from him. Careful, go ahead, Joe. Please remain seated. This little white building off to your right with the yellow door is our cabinet making shop. We put that up a few years ago. All of the beams in that building were either hand hewn here at the village by a craftsman, a sauna, a water-powered sawmill. We mortised all the joints out in front of the public. And once we got the frame up, it became a hybrid. When we put up a new structure, we don't get the exemptions that we do when we move an old one. We have to go by modern building codes. We do have a talented woodworker working in there today. If you'd like to visit with him and watch him work. Yes, you know. This big white store over here to your right is the Ace of Night store. We brought that in from Dumbarton, Vermont. Feel free to go in there and browse around and see what would have been available to purchase in the early 1800s. There's goods from all over the world in there. I think you'd be surprised. We actually had an inventory list of what was in that store in 1838. That's how we stocked it.
Oh, that looks cool.
Have you folks all been out to the schoolhouse down there on the right-hand side of the road?
Not yet.
That was brought in from Candia, New Hampshire. It dates back to 1810. By the 1830s, most towns are broken up into districts. All the kids in each district between the ages of 4 and 17 go to the same one-room schoolhouse. We might have anywhere between 15 and 40 kids in there at one time. All different ages, all working at their own lessons at their own rate of speed. You'd have one teacher. Your teacher would correct your lessons and keep order in the classroom to learn by memorization. It was not uncommon for kids to have to walk 2 or 3 miles to go to school each day. They'd be going to school in the middle of the winter and the middle of the summer. In the spring, they'd stay home, help their family prepare the ground and plant their crops. In the fall, they'd stay home and help harvest to get ready for winter. There are no grades, no graduations, no truancy laws. That schoolhouse had been preserved because New Hampshire's late governor, Frederick Smith, went to school there as a child. Later on in life, he founded the University of New Hampshire. This little white building off to your right, underneath this big elm tree, is our law office. We brought that in from Woodstock, Connecticut. By the 1830s, little law offices like that started to pop up all over New England. They offered a lot more customer confidentiality, the central room of the building. That was another building that was moved in one piece. It wasn't nearly as challenging as the bank was. This white salt box over here to your right is the Richardson Parsonage. We brought that in from the Podunk area of East Brookfield. That's where we portray that our minister and his family lived. Oh. There is an area called Podunk. It's a Native American word, soft, marshy ground. Just off of Route 49 if you head north towards Spencer. Most of the time in the 1830s, a minister's contract would include his housing. If it didn't, you could rent a house like that in the 1830s for between $50 and $70 a year. You could buy it for $700 or $800. This barn out in back is the only building we have that didn't come out of New England. That was brought in from Schoharie, New York. It was actually the first building that was moved here in 1937. Changed the roof line to make it look a little bit more New England style instead of Dutch architecture, and added that small door on the right. Little building on the corner here is that tin shop. We have a tinner working in there all day today. If you'd like to visit with him and watch him work. Just about anything you've seen made out of tinware here at the village can be reproduced right in that little shack. This building over here to your right is the Bullet Tavern. This was actually parts of two different buildings.
A chariot, like that little thing now.
The Sudanese when it first opened up needed a place for food service and more modern restrooms. If you go through this door over here on your left, it brings you into an exhibit area. What a tavern would look like in the early 1800s. Stay straight through that exhibit area, it brings you into the Great Room, which is a banquet hall. There's beautiful arch timbers that came from a covered bridge out of Fishhead, New York, originally. Before the pandemic, we used that room for a lot of special functions.
Mama.
Private parties, wedding receptions, business meetings, family gatherings, Thanksgiving dinner. Go through this door over here to your right, brings you to another small exhibit area. We also have some 21st century restrooms directly through that door. Upstairs we have some office space for some of our interpretational staff. Downstairs we have a cafeteria that's open from 11 to 3 today. Originally we called that building the Village Inn. Then later on we changed the name to the Bullet Tavern, named it after Cromwell Bullet. He was a prominent innkeeper here in Sturbridge in the early 1800s. He was an agent for the Hartford to Worcester stage line, owned what is now the Public House over on Route 131 here in town. This big white federal-looking place over here on the east end of the common is the Salem Townhouse. This was originally over on Route 31 in Charlton, next town east of here. Salem Town was a progressive farmer and a politician. At one time, 13 people lived in that house, and they peddled dairy products as far east as Boston. There's a room upstairs that served as a Masonic meeting house, which was over in Charlton. It's also where they filmed part of the movie Hawaii here with Julie Andrews in 1963. This yellow building off to your right is our printing office. We brought that in from Grove Street in Worcester. At one time, well-known patriot Isaiah Thomas owned that building when he left Boston. The next building down on the right is our cider mill out of Brookfield, New Hampshire. Oh. Here we are back at the Minor Grant Store and Bake Shop. Thank you, folks. Good to see you folks again. It's been a while.
How long are you going to be doing this today?
The map guide says 1. I'll be out here until after that a little bit.
A little after 1.
I got a couple of meetings this afternoon.
I want food.
Thank you.
How long have you been doing this?
What time is it now? I had horses here as an independent contractor for 43 years.
Matt, over
When I
this
took
way.
the position I have here now, I'm the coordinator of the horse program now. You know, these horses are all horses that I use for logging and pulling in competition. And when I took the position, I sold these 4 to them. And as long as I'm in charge of the program, they've never been neglected or abused, you know, so it makes a good home for them. You know, I just don't, no, please don't, honey. Thank you for asking. I just don't trot right out of the barn like I did 60 years ago, you know. Between physically getting old and the price of diesel fuel, I don't think I'll ever pull horses again. But you never know. I got a couple of colts at home I'm training. You know, gets in your blood.